Welcome to another episode of Rectec Reels. I'm Henna, Commercial Success Manager here at Rectec. And joining me today is Manan Shah at Recruiterflow, and we're going to be talking about all things implementing a new CRM. So Manan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, sure. Thank you so much, Henna, for getting me on here. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Recruiterflow. We are an applicant tracking and a CRM system built for small and medium recruiting and staffing businesses. What we do really, really well is bring out productivity and help you automate a lot of your recruiting processes. We've been around for about 5 years.
Amazing. Good stuff. Let's get into the questions then. So Manan, I think it's safe to say that you are an absolute expert when it comes to recruitment CRMs. So I wanted to ask you around what common misconceptions that agencies tend to make when it comes to implementing a new recruitment CRM.
All right. Yeah, that's a great question. So number one misconception is about data migration. A lot of times agencies think that, hey, as soon as I give the backup, my job is done. Now, magically, my data is going to appear in the new software. Yeah, I wish it were true, but data migrations are kind of finding needles in the haystack. So there is a lot of involvement that you will need to correctly migrate the data that you want. Is number one. Number two is a lot of people really underestimate the amount of time it takes to migrate the data, and you want to have that. You want to give that process time to do it right. So that for your continued success. So these are the two most common misconceptions, I think, around implementation and data migration.
Sure. That's a really good point, actually. I think a lot of agencies will think, oh, right, that's something that can happen overnight, or they think it's going to take ages, like there's no in between. So actually, from yourself, obviously being an expert, how long do you think it would typically tend to take an agency to implement? And also why? What should they be doing in that time?
Yeah, so depending on the complexity of the migration, you should always account for 6 to 12 weeks for migrations, and and the process starts when you deliver the backup to your provider, right? So because after that there is a lot of data validation. You will have to help your provider finding those needles in the haystack, as I said, doing data validation, understanding how you are going to change your processes post the implementation. You also want to start planning on stakeholder buy-in. How are you going to implement and train going forward? So doing all of this takes time, and you don't want to be bounded by a very strict deadline to make suboptimal decisions.
Sure. Yeah, it's a lot to be done in that time period. And I think, as you said before, people think once they hand over that information, then their job is done. But obviously that's not necessarily the case. So I think actually what you're kind of getting at there is how important it is to make sure that you're working with your provider that you're moving forward to, because that's going to make the most sense, right? Okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
just on that then, what advice would you give to somebody who is just about to implement a new CRM?
Great question. So number one thing that I would tell them is when you're moving to a new system, that's a great time to reevaluate a lot of your processes as well. A lot of times what we see is when users move from old systems to Recruiterflow, is they try to implement their older processes on the new software. And your processes are a result of the tools and technology that you had, or the challenges that you had maybe 2 years, 3 years back, which are not necessarily true today. So with the new software, you have better technology, and you want to relook at all of those processes from ground up and build new ones around the challenges that you have today and the technology that you have today. So that's a very important thing to do. And second is you need to have somebody who's dedicated to work with your new provider to help them migrate the data, plan trainings, and get buy-ins, not just from executives, but also from rank and file.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's just some really, really good advice. So thank you so much, Manan. So don't forget, if you are in the market to source some new recruitment technology and want to take advantage of our comparison platform, you can register for free today at rectec.io. Thanks so much for joining me today, Manan, and have a good day.
Thank you. My pleasure.